Hi, this is Christopher Smith. I'm the publisher of the American Cannabis Report, and I'm super fortunate to have Ian Seiferling. He's the founder of Adaviv, which is a Boston-based company working to become a leader in controlled environment agriculture, and they're focused exclusively on the cannabis industry. Hi, Ian. Good to see you. Welcome.
Hey, good, Christopher. How are you?
Excellent, excellent. Where am I reaching you?
So I'm in Boston, Massachusetts. I wish I could say sunny Boston, but it's gray as usual out here.
I've heard of that town. I'm originally from the East Coast. As a matter of fact, I'm from Connecticut. But so yeah, I'm well versed in the weather and how April breaks your heart about every other day. You hope so badly it's going to become spring, and the weather says, "Nah, not quite yet."
Exactly. That's what's been going on here every day.
Oh yeah.
And then the cold wind hits you in the face.
Oh, April is tough, and Boston especially. Coming across the harbor, coming off the ocean and across the harbor is just miserable, right? And sometimes.
Yeah. I'm from Canada, though, so I shouldn't.
So you know, so you're in shorts underneath the desk. You're wearing shorts,
Exactly.
right? I got you. So you know, a question that I always ask, because I'm always fascinated, and especially with you, with your background, just so the viewers can understand and kind of figure out where how's this guy get here? Is how did you not only what did you study in school, for example, but also then how did you end up in the cannabis business? Of all places you could have used those skills and your interests and the degrees that you have, and how did you end up over here with us?
Right. Yeah, that's a great question. I could say it wasn't like intentional in that respect, but hopefully we can talk about later why we think, cannabis is going to be kind of a catalyst for innovation in agriculture. And that's kind of, long story short, that's how we ended up here. But my background's in biology, environmental sciences. So as I mentioned, I grew up in Canada, and specifically kind of the Midwest of Canada, Saskatchewan, which is all farms and
it's like Kansas, but cold.
Yeah, cold half the time.
I mean, it's sort of, it's in the middle, and it's pasture land, and now it's farmland. It's that kind of countryside, right?
It is very much. Yeah, it's very flat as well. The running joke is that you can watch your dog run away for 2 days.
Okay, there you go. Got it.
Yeah. But it's a beautiful place, and there's a lot of nature, and I grew up in and around that. And I've just always been really passionate and interested in biology and nature. And but at the same time, technology as well. My father's an engineer, and we were always building stuff growing up, whether that was airplanes or cars and tech. And so I've always just tried to combine those two things. I did a lot of research through my academic career in environmental sciences using things like GIS and satellite imaging and data science and some AI as that became more and more advanced, to understand patterns in nature and complexity in nature, which I love doing and love spending time outside. I did some consulting for a few years as well, and worked with a lot of farmers, conventional farmers and ranchers in the field, looking at how we could make practices more sustainable and ensure that we protect the integrity of ecosystems at the same time. And so, I love that, but I wanted to do more applied work as well, eventually. And I ended up down here in Boston at MIT at a lab called the Sensible City Lab, which studied anything and everything urban, smart IoT, how technologies can help improve the lives of people in cities, essentially. And to me, that was a stepping stone where I could do more applied work, and a lot of projects had industry partnerships. And some of the stuff I explored there was around urban farming, and controlled environment agriculture is kind of the technical term for anything agriculture that is undercover, that is in a situation where you can control the environment and the inputs a little more precisely. So that led me down a path where I got really interested and really bullish on controlled environment agriculture. It's really big in other countries like the Netherlands, and as we face sustainability, food supply chain issues, climate issues, I think controlled environment ag is going to be more and more a bigger part of the the agriculture and food ecosystem. So
I think that a lot of people, pardon me for interrupting, I think a lot of Americans wouldn't know that, if I'm not mistaken, the Netherlands is one of the biggest agricultural centers in Europe. And yet it's one of the smallest, it's one of the smallest countries, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they export a ton, and I think in the 70s they kind of made a decision to get more self-reliant on their food production, and they built out an ecosystem and a technology kind of infrastructure. So that's where a lot of the greenhouse technology is coming from. And yeah, they supply, they're one of the biggest exporters of things like strawberries and other fruits and vegetables. And I think it's catching on now in the United States, with global issues and supply chain issues. There is a big push to get more self-reliant in food production, and then climate change, of course. We can't keep having crops getting wiped out by early frosts or climate and drought. So it's growing really fast, that industry in the United States and elsewhere. And so I'm really bullish about it. I think it's a really, really interesting place where technology meets conventional methods. And when we started our company Adaviv, we were looking to solve some problems in indoor ag, namely how can we kind of help close the loop between controlling the environment and the inputs and what the plants are telling us, and keeping the plants healthy. There was a lot of ability to collect data in those farms from the environment because they are controlled, and there's ability to be really precise with those controls. But there's not a lot of feedback between those inputs and what the plants are doing, what the plants are telling us, how they're responding, and how we optimize that whole system. So we started to look into how we could use some of our expertise, mine being plant biology and computer vision and data science. And my co-founder, Mo, has got a background in physics. He's a computer scientist and machine learning expert.
So that's Mo Vazile?
Vazife, yeah.
See, I told you I was going to butcher all the names. I'm glad you corrected me. Thank you.
That's only part of his name. The rest.
Oh, really? Okay, it's a really long one. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So just if I could just sort of catch you for a sec. So let's just for the listeners again, let's just make sure that we're clear. You are from Canada, from the farm country in Canada. Father was an engineer, so you have sort of a tinkering mentality, and yet biology is a passion from since you were a boy. You got your master's in science, I believe, and now you've got your PhD from MIT. Am I correct about that?
It's kind of split. I did my PhD in Montreal in Canada, and then I came down here for kind of the last chapter of my PhD.
Got it.
And then returned actually as a postdoc, as a researcher at MIT for a few years.
So who gave you the paper? That's the question. Who gave you the PhD?
That would be the University of Quebec in Canada.
Got it. Okay. Well, so just to sort of draw the picture, just so that people get it. And then what you found in your studies is that using the example of the Netherlands as a country who has instituted a policy and executed on a policy to develop more controlled growing environments as a kind of a response to environmental challenges, which fluctuate so wildly and now even more wildly with climate change. And I think there's another piece of it, which I'm not sure if you mentioned or not, but I just want to repeat it if you did, which is that there's a trend toward urbanization. People are moving back toward the cities all over. I mean, I've talked earlier about Richard Florida's book. It's Rise of the Creative Class, and it just talks about urbanization. And what you're suggesting is that we need to bring the food to the people. And rather than grow them out on the farm and then transport it, which is immensely costly with fuel and all of the environmental burdens that come from that, if we grow it in our local environment, you eliminate all that transport. And you control the growing season. And you probably get more growing seasons because you're not completely reliant on the sun and the season. You can control temperature, you control the light, etc. So it makes so much sense what you're saying.
Yeah, those things are all true. Yeah, and you can, be a lot more efficient with the use of resources, right? You can recycle the water, like you said. If it's not sunny out, we can supplement with some LED lighting. So you get more consistency. There is still an open debate about urban farming in general and about this kind of food miles, you know, because the conventional agricultural system, this is true for the kind of growing cannabis supply chain as well. You know, it is fairly efficient, and you have a lot of, you know, economies of scale.
Right.
And whereas if you start having small farms in the city and you got to truck that stuff around, even if it's just to the corner co-op, it's a little less efficient. So there's some trade-offs there. And I think in the end, it'll be a hybrid. You know, we'll still need big farms, but we can also supplement those higher value crops by growing them closer to cities, and then having, you know, people work in them, because, you know, that's another issue in farming is the labor shortage, and the, you know, the attractiveness to be a farmer. It's kind of fell out of fashion, but with new technologies, with farms that are near the city, I think people are getting really interested back into farming.
Let's talk for a second, if you don't mind, and I don't mean to sort of divert you off your path of what you're talking about, but I've always been fascinated about the verticality. You know, farmers, like you said, you can watch your dog run away for 2 years. Okay, so I mean, that's the obviously completely horizontal experience, right? But the vertical farming is 5, 6, 7 floors worth of growing. And sometimes, you know, you can have, like, people in cannabis always will ask the question, if your license allows for 10,000 foot, let's say, can you grow 2 levels? Is that allowed? And it's always the first question people ask, is it allowed to grow a second level? So with what you're saying, you know, we're talking about the second floor has broccoli, the third floor has beans, you know, that kind of thing. I mean, it sounds like the versatility is built into your model as well.
Yeah, totally. I think like vertical farming obviously has that huge benefit that your production per square foot, like, is kind of theoretically kind of limitless or exponential if you just
theoretically
keep vertically, right? But there are like, you know, energetic kind of trade-offs there, but growing vertically, if you can do it, if you have the technology and the infrastructure, makes a lot of sense for sure. Because you can grow more in a smaller footprint. That's the whole idea.
Sorry, so I got you off track. I'm sorry. I hope I didn't.
No, I mean, I'll just ramble if you let me. So that's good.
Just jumping in there. So now, all right. So now we know perfectly clear about how you're involved in biology as well as trying to solve problems. Technology is natural, sort of in our era, of course. And if your brain allows you to kind of get into those and put those two things together, which a lot of people, you know, for a lot of people, those two things don't necessarily go together. You're putting those things together in an interesting way. And now, drum roll, cannabis. Cannabis. Now, what is driving you toward cannabis, and then, of course, what problems is this group Adaviv able to solve?
Yeah, sure. Good transition there into the cannabis specifically. You know, there was many reasons that we started really focusing on that plant. Of course, like, the value of the crop was one in terms of building a startup and a company. You know, in that sense, we sometimes say we took the Tesla model, right? Like, we're building like the Type S, the sports car for agriculture, and cannabis is that. And then when we can work more and more on optimizing and you know, building those economics and those efficiencies in our own business model, we can move it to other crops. And I think eventually, you know, automation, our type of technology will be ubiquitous, but you have to start somewhere. And like I said, cannabis, I think, is going to be a really great catalyst. But that wasn't the only reason. I think, you know, we started to explore, we talked to many growers in those early days, and understood what the big problems are, what's their pain points, you know, what keeps them awake at night. And, you know, cannabis is a really tough plant to grow well. You know, I think everyone says it's a weed, right? And it grows like a weed, which is true. And it was coming out of this, you know, everybody knows the history, right? And we had those early innovators like taking all those risks for us in the early days. But now they have to, you know, with legalization, we have to grow at scale. There's big companies being built out of this industry, and it's a lot different to grow a few plants, you know, than growing thousands and thousands at scale. And we recognize that as a problem that we could help solve, is like really work with these growers to kind of take what they did at the smaller scale, where they're able to give those plants like really a lot of hands-on care, but help them do that at scale. So that was another reason we just saw a big need. And then the more we got involved in the industry, it just seemed like, you know, the more opportunities there were, the more interesting people we met. It's a really fun industry. And while we're not having that personal, you know, story ourselves in terms of, you know, a lot of people come into this industry because they had that plant affected their lives in a really positive way, right? But for me, coming from a background in biology, you know, I didn't have personally that story, but I find it fascinating as a plant, as a complex system, and all the medicinal properties. So that was another reason, is just the complexity of this plant and how we can help improve and standardize how we grow it, and just the people we met. So, you know, we had a lot of naysayers at first, especially, you know, coming out of MIT, which is a little more conservative institution sometimes. It's got a big brand, right? But they welcomed the idea and supported. So we actually won at one point most unlikely startup to come out of an MIT award or something to this effect, because
that's an easy one. I would have given you that award.
Yeah. But having said that, like others, we weren't the first. You know, Jane Technologies came out of MIT. They're ahead of us. So anyway, you know, many factors: the opportunity, the complexity, and you know, all the problems to help solve with growing this plant at scale, and yeah, just, you know, great people that we met and supporters. And we do want to expand to other crops pretty quickly, but we are very hyper focused on this plant for the moment.
Sure. I can understand how, well, like I said, I had the same reaction when I first heard about you, which is MIT plus cannabis equals question mark. That was my first thing on my page. Like, how does that actually work? But now, of course, I completely understand it. The plant is incredibly complex, and to do it well is a really, really loving care sort of situation, right?
Right.
And I come from a California market, right? So
Yeah.
in our mind, in our sort of, you know, California hero market, you know, we have Emerald Triangle, we have Humboldt County, we have people who raise these incredibly beautiful plants that are gorgeous and huge and productive, but they raise them with little tiny snips and clips, and everything is really like raising children. You know, it's really, really hands-on. And the thinking is that this raising stuff at scale is all different. It can't be done. It won't be as good and everything. And so what you're saying is actually, by marrying the very best practices of the growing and assisting them with some automation, that you can actually get really high quality output and at scale.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And not to say that we don't want to work with those, you know, those growers making premium craft products on a smaller scale. We really do, and we can learn a lot from them. Those guys have so much knowledge about how to grow this plant well. It's just helping, in that case, take some of the subjectivity out of it too, because, you know, you can have lots of experience, 20, 30 years, and there's a lot of intuition that grows in it. But I'm still a strong supporter of, you know, this integration of art and science in a way, right? And you can call cultivation or growing an art, but I think science can only support it, and that's what's going to produce the best products, is where you can combine this cultural knowledge that growers have in their heads with some standard practices and some data to help them kind of track what they're trying to do and let them focus on what they do best, instead of, trying to run around and treat pests and diseases, or trying to run around and make sure everybody on their team is like doing things up to the standards that they want. Like, let's let them focus on what they do best, hunting, like working with new genetics and figuring out like some of that tough stuff. And while we can help automate some of that tedious stuff and help them do, what they want to do at scale is the idea. Yeah.
I think there's an example in the news that's really current news. In fact, I just heard about it yesterday. Scott, Miracle Grow, right? A big ag company, obviously, just bought a company in the New York market, a women-owned company. So part of the story was about a women-owned company that had been formed, had grown up well, and had been sold off, and that was a great success, obviously. And let's do some more of that. But what I was thinking when I heard that was, Big Ag is already here. Big Ag is already in the industry now. Here they are, right? And we know that Big Alcohol is in because they, Constellation Brands had big deals with some of the Canadian companies. We know that Big Pharma is already in because Pfizer just bought a big testing company for $7-point-something billion within the last month. I mean, they're here. The big guys are at the gates,
That's right. Yeah, they see the.
So when I hear a story like about Miracle Grow, for example, I'm thinking inputs, right? This is a company, they make fertilizer, so this is inputs in, right? So part of the art and science, I would bet, is really in how the inputs are moderated again and again and again and again, over and over, so that you get the perfect result, right? I mean, is that one of the things that you focus on?
Yeah, we do. I think like consistency is one of the big kind of challenges that we help try to solve. Is how do you get that when you have that really top performing crop or even a top performing plant? How do you take that and repeat it and continually improve? And we do that through our sensing technologies, computer vision, but also through our software and analytics, and create these like better, more standardized workflows. But with a company like that, optimizing those inputs, I think too, it depends who you ask, but our feeling as well is, especially for larger scale cultivations, there's been a big, like, it's been a race in some senses, and people, folks are trying to pump yields up, maximize yield. That was kind of the name of the game for quite a while, but now it's, there's a shift to quality now as well. And there's an argument to be made that maybe, we're throwing too much at these plants in some cases, too much nutrients and inputs. And depending how you want to grow, some folks don't want to grow with a lot of synthetic nutrients. They might want a combination of organic. And that's the other thing, and we want to help is optimize what's the optimal amount of nutrients that you need to put in, so that you're not overspending or not throwing energy unnecessarily at the plants.
Sure, or not in, I guess in a way you'd say, overfeeding, over medicating the plants, right?
Yeah, over medicating, exactly.
Or not too many vitamins, not too many, whatever.
Too. We do a lot with plant health. That's kind of one of our cores, and the same argument as with all the treatments. There's limited tools that these growers have in cannabis because it's all organic, so highly regulated. So we help them, understand, is that treatment actually working or not? As opposed to blanket spraying everything once a week. Let's be more targeted depending on what the plants are telling us, where the issues are popping up, and all that stuff is really expensive. The beneficial bugs, the inputs, and we want to help them, not overspend and plan that stuff better so that they can, at the end of the day, get better margins. We want to make them more profitable.
Now, I think what you're describing is a lot of the work you do is software. I mean, really, it's analytical. But now, do you make hardware as well? Do you make products that, I don't know, stick in the soil or attach to the plant, or do you make hardware, or how do you utilize that in your work?
Yeah, so our core, is machine vision technologies, and there is hardware involved that we build. Okay. But we build a lot of software around that core sensing technology, because it's not just about, in our opinion anyway, throwing data at a farmer or grower. We have to make it, usable and actionable in a repetitive way, not just once a season or once a crop cycle. We want to help them, take this, we call it lean cultivation, because we really utilize lean methodology for continual improvement. In terms of the technology, it starts for us with computer vision, which we have a machine that moves around the crops much like a human scout would. So we're kind of automating that scouting process, and we collect really high resolution data on the plants through imagery, visible imagery, some non-visible like thermal and infrared, other bands and spectrum. And we collect that and we build AI models to help predict either pest and disease and stress, or we call them performance KPIs. So metrics on the plant structure that the growers can, did my audio cut out?
Nope, I hear you fine.
Okay, sorry, I got a message pop up. Yeah, so plant health detection, detecting the state of the plant. Is there pest, disease, other stress like nutrient deficiency, or plant performance KPIs. So these are like crop registration or crop steering metrics, number of flowers, how many big buds, flower A versus flower B, how dense is the plants, the branching. So those metrics that help the growers make cultivation decisions, when to deleaf, when to pinch and maximize the number of colas on each plant. So all that stuff, again, that was easy to do when they were growing a few plants, and they could really literally, touch and feel and count and all that themselves. Do the same thing, but at the large scale farm. Okay.
Now, you talked about one of your passions as well was just call it as a big umbrella concept, sustainability or environmental concern. Now, when you're talking about growing indoor, at the end of a season, when the flowers are taken, right, and the flower is the main output for your work, I think, right, is the whole plant taken down? Or does it grow for a couple of seasons or a couple of years or whatever? How, not sure if everyone who's listening might even know that answer.
Yeah, sure. I mean, but you're speaking to cannabis cultivation specifically. Yeah.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Sure. So, we work with operators, with cultivations. So we try to provide insights, but we don't sell or trade or anything like growing recipes or growing techniques. So we'll help give them data and insights to make decisions. And for example, would be like, how do you want to expand your strain portfolio and differentiate and push things to the limit. I'm trying to help them do that. So if you're growing like a 13-week strain instead of an 8-week strain, that's really tough, because often, the longer it grows, the more vulnerable it is to diseases and pathogens, and you might lose that entire crop. But if you can really monitor it closely, we can help you keep on top of it and keep it healthy, so you can push that, normally 8-week cycle to 13 weeks. And now you've got a product that maybe nobody else does. So we help, the growers do those sorts of things, but we follow, whatever practices they have. And the standard, as far as we know, is, everybody runs like tiered kind of crop cycles. So a big farm might have different bays or valves, as they call them, or if it's indoor, might have different rooms, and they're constantly, cycling and harvesting those plants, and they're taking the whole plant. Right. The only exception is the mother plants, which we also help kind of keep healthy and optimize, and those stay, those stay in there longer to take the cuttings. But again, that's an area that data can help, because there's always questions around what's the optimal lifespan of a mother? When does the genetics start to degrade? Or if a mother is sick, how's that going to affect the clones? And because we create this data from mother all the way to harvest, we can start to understand those patterns, and we've helped growers, source viruses back to, which mother did that come from, which cutting did that come from, so they can improve their SOPs and make sure that that virus doesn't spread again.
And I'm wondering now, in addition, so let's just say that what my question was trying to get toward was, after the plant has expressed itself, given its flowers, right, created the colors, etc. After that plant is finished and needs to be harvested, you talk about sustainability, in the sense of, so I'm thinking that big cycle, right? What do we do with those plants? What do we do with that organic material? And do you have any, is that a concern of yours? Is that something you also work on?
So we're not, I wouldn't say we're working on that ourselves right now. But again, sustainability is at our core. The first sustainable kind of lever that we want to help improve is energy use, because these farms, especially the completely indoor ones, they are very energy hungry and consume a lot of energy, mostly from the lights. And
the focus on sustainability and how people have an opinion because of what they're reading in the news that cannabis is an energy hog. It was a big monster piece of news from the last year, I would say. And I know that this is a thing you're focused on. I would love to hear, something from the good guys here about, what is actually really being thought about in the industry in terms of managing energy better and making this whole concept work better. I'd love to know what you have to say about that.
Yeah, no, it's a really interesting topic, I think. And, there's a lot to say. I think it's nice that I'm seeing like a lot of people start to think and talk about energy efficiency and sustainability. It's now at some of the industry conventions. It's part of the panels. It's part of the speaking. So that's a great progress. I think we're as I was saying, we Adaviv, we're not involved in post-harvest. You were mentioning biomaterials. What should we do with that? I think if we talk about materials and biomaterials, that's a place where I think the industry needs to work with the government and with the regulators. And maybe there's bottlenecks on the regulator side because, again, the operators are sometimes stuck in a corner because they have to adhere to these really tight regulations. And for example, when they de-leaf or when they harvest and you have the leftover biomass, they're not allowed to do anything with it. They have to destroy it in a very controlled way, which is it's wasteful, right?
Absolutely.
And other crops, there are new technologies that are coming out that help you reuse that biomaterial and go back into the system as fertilizer, as other byproducts, right? You can get fibers from it. And we're good friends with a company that's doing exactly that. So I think in that terms, it would be nice to see the government and the regulators step up and help the industry be more sustainable. On the energy side of things, that's where we want to have an impact, is help these farms become more energy efficient, mostly in the lighting, as I said, which is the biggest source of energy use. And I think there's lots of opportunities there. There's farms now that are running on renewables, that are having self-gen units in the farm, and that's all great progress. And again, I think cannabis can be a platform for that, can be a catalyst for getting some of these new technologies into application, into the mainstream. So yes, there's tons of areas to improve efficiency, but there's not an industry you can't say that about right now. I don't think cannabis is any different or an exception than any other.
Well, I think what's important about what you just said, just in my perspective, Ian, is that you see cannabis as a potential leader in agriculture and in agricultural advancements, and probably because in some narrow ways it's a new crop. It's of course, historically, it's not at all. Historically, it's one of the first crops that was ever cultivated by mankind, starting 12,000 years ago. So in fact, it's the
That's the
most
irony,
ancient.
right? Yeah.
It's the most ancient crop, and yet because of prohibition, because of the illegal 100 years that we lost, now it seems like it's a brand new baby all of a sudden. Like, oh, we've never seen this before. But really, it's only because it's emerging out of the illegal world, sort of back into the daylight. And here is, someone like you, a data scientist and a biologist, PhD biologist, by the way, who is ready to sort of catch it and help it move into the 21st century without all that legacy of bad processes and, massive combines and all the stuff that's happening out in Saskatchewan, in Kansas, by the way, right? So it's interesting that you in your mind, cannabis is actually a leading candidate to do things in a new and more efficient way. I think that is a great statement.
Yes. Yeah. I can agree more.
And in an indoor way, by the way, which again, it's hard for people to get their head around the fact that we're going to be growing whole crops and massive food and agricultural products indoors. And actually, it's very sensible to do that.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely can be. I personally, I'm still a strong proponent of the hybrid systems, like utilizing the sun as well. But sure. Because it's there and it's kind of, why not?
it's there and it's free. So hello.
But we can model all these things out now, and sometimes again with the ability to grow vertically, you can capture a lot of gains in the space and how you use the energy. And so definitely the future farm is gonna look like is gonna be a combination of sun energy and hopefully renewably sourced, like synthetic energy, and growing vertically and using a lot of automation for sure.
Great. Ian, how long have you guys been in business, Adaviv?
Yeah, we've been coming up on our third year in business. Yeah, since we kind of launched out of that MIT ecosystem.
Right, and I think you have about maybe 15 people with you now or so?
Yeah, 15, 16, depending. We've got some other folks we work with contractually, and some folks in other countries that help us on the back end software annotation. Great. But our kind of core is about 16 people.
And are your clients the people that you're working with and helping them with their data and optimizing their processes? Are they mostly in the Northeast where you are, or are they sort of everywhere?
They're both coasts. So we're out here in the Northeast, but we're working with growing partners in your neck of the woods as well, and in California, which of course is the biggest market, and a lot of knowledge there on growing, as you alluded earlier. So yeah, we're deployed across the country, and but lots of new states coming online, lots of interesting markets like Michigan. So we want to work with all those folks.
And there's so much opportunity, I think, from, again, your neck of the woods, where I think of Harvard Medical School, I think of Mass General, I think of, I think of the medical knowledge base there, the legacy of great medical research, et cetera. I mean, what I think you're helping to provide is hopefully, you mentioned, I go back to one of the first things you said, which is about innovation, right? I mean, America has always been about innovation and opportunity and all of this, and cannabis provides, I think, one of the most interesting opportunities for innovation that any of us have seen for a long time. Whether it be in the different cannabinoids or in the terpenes, or how they respond and how they actually help people with really profound illnesses. I mean, we're seeing just a little bit of it so far with epileptic children, for example, and how profound the impact can be of cannabis. But there's so much more to look into, don't you think?
Oh, totally. It's the interactions and the complexity, and what terpenes do versus the THC forms. There's ton. I think we've only the old tip of the iceberg, right? We're only at
right. I think all of us are really at the, tip of the iceberg, tip of the spear. We're at the tip. We are tipping right now. No question about it. But anyway, the opportunity again for innovation, the opportunity for innovation, I think, is profound, and I sure appreciate that. A fact that a guy like you, with an MIT education and such a deep background in not only in biology but technology, is bringing your skills to our industry. I think we're very fortunate, and I'm excited to hear what you guys are able to pull together.
Cool. No, thank you for those words. Yeah, we're excited too. And again, we're technologists at heart. We have plant scientists on the team as well, but it's only half the equation, right? We want to learn from the guys that know this plant inside and out. But you're right too. Like, we're in cultivation, but there's so much on the biochemistry side to be discovered. There's also, and then once it's in the human body, how it's interacting with our own system. And I think like the exciting stuff is really like going to be like when we can start combining some of these data sets and on the plant side with the end user side and the patient side, because everybody might react differently. And so I think there's a lot of standardization we want to do on the product side, on the plant side. Once we have that, we can start to do a lot more cool experimentation with all the things that you were speaking to on the cannabinoid system. It's really at the start, other plants like where aspirin came from and other plant medicines, those are decades of research and optimization, and we're just at the starting point, but we have a lot to go off of, and we got a lot of new technologies too.
I also appreciate in seeing, like, as I'm looking at your website and learning more about your company, I see that your team is really quite diverse. I see men and women. I see people from all over the world. I hate to do the kind of, that person looks like he has a Latin name. I bet he's a Spanish person, but it gives you sort of an indication of diversity, and it's not just a whole bunch of white guys going clack clack clack. It's got that piece of it too. Because I think in our industry that not only is innovation so critical, and thinking and recognizing that our opportunity to innovate, but also that diversity is our strength here, and that hearing different voices, different perspectives, and different knowledge bases feeding into our ability to capture that innovation opportunity is really critically important. And it's so great to see you're doing that.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, that's really great to hear, and that's apparent, because that's one of our core principles and values is diversity of not only people, but backgrounds and opinions. And we want, the best ideas to win inside the company, and to bring like people that come from different backgrounds and experiences, because all the things you said, it really creates like a productive, high performance ecosystem, I think, rather than having, any kind of like group mentality or too much of the same opinions floating around. But yeah, we've worked really hard for that. My co-founder, you are right, there's definitely a Latin component or influence in Adaviv. I mentioned my two co-founders were all from different countries. Me being Canada, Mo originally from Iran, and then did his grad studies in Canada, and then Julian Ortiz, my other co-founder, who is from Colombia originally, and did his MBA at Sloan. So he's very passionate about agriculture in his country, and his goal is to take what we've built to South America soon as well, and support people there. And we hire several people from South America as well.
That's really well. Anyway, your vision is really admirable. I think that's again, you're on the tip. If you want to be on the spear or the iceberg, you can choose. Probably today you're on the iceberg because you're in Boston in April, but maybe on other days some other kind. But anyway, I just think it's a visionary component of what you're doing that really when you say things, but when you're also actually already doing them, of course, the proof is already there. It's just that you're already thinking that way, and you're proving up your concepts as well. They're not just idle words. So I think it's, anyway, just my personal opinion. I think that's profoundly important.
Appreciate it.
So I know you've got a lot of things to do. You're the CEO of the company. You've got a lot going on. I hear people probably knocking at the door like, we got to, So I want to tell you how much I appreciate your time, Ian, and for sharing so much information about not only how you got to the industry, but what you're bringing to it and what you hope to bring to it as well. And how what you're doing is so on the cutting edge of what's really, really happening in the world, in the Netherlands, in vertical agriculture, in urban agriculture. You're looking at energy and you're looking at best practices in the cannabis industry. I think you've got so many great things going on. So congratulations. And I really look forward to hearing, as we go forward, hearing more great things about you.
Yeah. No, thanks so much. I really appreciate you having us on. And I think, again, to keep with our analogy, and we're only at the cusp, the tip, and
Right.
So I hope we can talk more and dive into more technology in the future together.
Well, we'll keep in touch, and as new things are happening with you, I would love to have you back and love to hear more about what you guys are working on. Great.
Yeah, thanks a lot, and we'll see you out on the West Coast soon, I hope.
For sure. And as a matter of fact, I'll be back east for the CWCBE conference in June. I'll be in New York for that.
Okay, we'll be there. We'll be there. Yeah.
Good. Well, then that'll give us a chance to say hi. Fantastic.
Yeah, that'll be great. No, I appreciate it, Chris. I appreciate you having us on and including us.
Hey, thanks a lot, Ian. I want to thank you for your time today. This is Christopher Smith, publisher of the American Cannabis Report. And once again, I was speaking with Ian Seiferling, who is the founder of Adaviv in Boston. I want to remind you to like, share, and subscribe. And also a special thanks to my good friends at Pro Cannabis Media. That would be Dan, Isabel, and of course, the famous Jimmy Young.
We are Pro Cannabis Media.